All right, so today we're tackling a behavior that's so common we barely even notice it, and yet it hides this really fascinating scientific mystery. We're talking, of course, about the contagious yawn.
And get this, I'm going to make a prediction. Somewhere between 40 and 60% of you watching this right now, you're probably going to yawn before we're done here. Seriously, just seeing the word, hearing me say it, or even just thinking about yawning, it's often enough to set you off. Are you feeling it yet? So why do we catch a yawn? It seems like such a simple question, but it's actually led scientists down two completely different paths. One path is all about our basic biology, our physiology, and the other, well, that one's all about our complex social lives.
Okay, so let's jump right in. We're going to start by breaking down the two main theories that are competing to explain this whole strange phenomenon.
So what's really at the heart of the debate is this. Is a yawn a physical thing, or is it a social thing? Are we doing it to, say, cool down our brains? Or are we doing it to connect with each other? Well, as it turns out, the answer is kind of both.
All right, let's start with our first big clue. And this one comes from the science behind a totally spontaneous, solitary yawn. You know the kind, the one you let out when you're all alone and you think nobody's watching.
So for a super long time, for centuries actually, everyone thought yawning was simple. We just needed more oxygen, right? Well, it turns out that's a total myth. In the late 20th century, scientists ran experiments where they gave people pure oxygen, and guess what? They still yawned. That old idea was busted, which led them to a much, much cooler theory.
And there's some really compelling evidence for this whole brain cooling idea, and it's not just in humans. For example, scientists have literally measured the brain temperature of lab rats, and they found it rises just before a yawn and then drops sharply right after. And for us, the effect is so direct you can test it yourself. Just putting a cold pack on your forehead can actually make you less likely to catch a yawn. How wild is that?
Okay, but that begs a pretty big question, right? If it's just about cooling your own brain, why on earth is it contagious? Well, that question brings us to our second major clue, and it's all about our social brain.
The timing on this is absolutely key. See, contagious yawning isn't something we're born with. It doesn't show up until we're about 4 or 5 years old. And what else happens right around that age? It's the exact moment when kids develop what's called theory of mind. That's that huge developmental leap where you finally understand that other people have their own thoughts and feelings, separate from yours.
And this incredible social ability is powered by something called the mirror neuron system. Now, the easiest way to think about these are as your brain's simulators. When you see someone else do something, like yawn, your mirror neurons fire up as if you were the one doing it. It creates this totally unconscious urge to copy that same action.
And this is where the empathy connection really comes into play. Studies have shown pretty clearly that you're way more likely to catch a yawn from a close family member than you are from a total stranger. It really seems like the stronger your emotional bond with someone is, the stronger that contagious yawn effect gets.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got it all figured out, right? Brain cooling plus empathy. Case closed. Well, not so fast. Just when that empathy theory seems to solve the whole mystery, the plot thickens. Because there's some pretty contradictory evidence out there.
Yeah, it turns out several recent studies are suggesting that the whole mechanism is a lot more complex than just a simple emotional echo.
For example, one study looked at people who scored high on a personality trait called cold-heartedness, which is pretty much what it sounds like, a trait linked to a lack of empathy. And they found these individuals were way less likely to catch a yawn. It's almost like that emotional bridge that a yawn needs to cross from person to person. It just wasn't there.
And then you have the case of autism, which adds another really interesting wrinkle. For a long time, people thought the reduced yawn contagion was about empathy deficits, but it seems the issue is actually less about a lack of empathy and more about just missing the social cue in the first place. You see, since individuals with ASD might not make as much direct eye contact, they might not even notice the yawn happening. But, and this is the fascinating part, when you specifically ask them to look at the yawner's eyes, that contagious effect, it comes right back.
And if that's not enough, a really big study in humans couldn't find any consistent link between the standard empathy tests people took and how likely they were to catch a yawn. And here's a real shocker. A huge analysis of dogs found that they yawned just as much when a stranger did it as when their own owner did. That really throws a wrench in the idea that it's all about emotional bonding, doesn't it? So, where does all this conflicting evidence leave us? We've got brain cooling, we've got empathy, we've got studies that contradict the empathy link. What's the deal? Well, the answer isn't picking one theory over the other. It's actually a powerful mix of both.
The really crucial thing to understand here is that yawning isn't just one thing. It's got layers. At its very core, yeah, it's an ancient biological tool for cooling down the brain and waking us up. But then, evolution got a hold of it and repurposed it, adding on these amazing, sophisticated layers of social signaling over millions of years.
Just think about it like this. It's a subconscious signal to get the whole group on the same page. Imagine a pack of wolves. If one of them starts getting a little drowsy and lets out a big yawn, the contagion spreads. It's like hitting a biological refresh button for the entire group, snapping everyone to a higher state of alertness. It's a silent way of saying, hey, everybody pay attention.
And believe me, this behavior is ancient. We've seen it everywhere. In lions, where it helps them synchronize their movements before a hunt. In elephants, even in domestic pigs. But the most mind-blowing discovery, just recently, was contagious yawning in zebrafish. Zebrafish. That suggests this whole group coordination thing is baked deep, deep into the vertebrate brain.
So that kind of leaves us with one last big thought, doesn't it? If a simple, everyday act like a yawn can tell us so much about our evolutionary past, our brain chemistry, and the deep social bonds that connect us, what else are we overlooking? What other tiny, simple acts are silently wiring us all together in ways we don't even realize?